Good evening and welcome to the script, the unfiltered, the unscripted, and the unapologetically real. See, each week the script dives headfirst into stories shaping our lives, from the headphones lighting up your feed to the love dramas unfolding in your DMs. Powered by real talk and raw perspective, this live experience blends culture, commentary, and community with the pulse on what matters now. Whether it's politics, relationships, or the internet's latest hot mess, we're breaking it all down with insight, humor, and just enough side eye. This isn't just a show, it's a front row seat to the conversation you didn't know you needed. Okay. Now, what I want to do today is this is going to be an interesting show. Forgive me for being a little late because initially I had a very special guest that had to cancel last minute. So the entire show that I had planned had to scrap the rundown. We were going to review the latest Clips album, and it was going to be a lot about hip hop. I'm actually going to save that one. I could have done it on my own, but I'm going to be honest. I don't know if you all would 100% agree with my thoughts as it relates to not only how I viewed that particular album, but just all the topics. So I was like, I kind of needed someone to spar with. So I had to scrap the rundown and put something together. But I'm actually really looking forward to this particular discussion. We're going to jump in, we're going to get messy. But before we jump into the show, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge our partnership with blackdoctor.org, which is one of the leading online destinations for trusted health information in the Black community. With over 2.6 million followers, blackdoctor.org is committed to empowering us with culturally relevant content that promotes physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Our collaboration is rooted in the belief that healing and growth happens through honest conversation. And that's exactly what the script delivers. Together, we're creating space that not only informs, but also inspires, bridging health, culture, and real talk in a way that speaks directly to our community. Okay. Now, for those of y'all that may not be aware, we are streaming on multiple platforms. Okay. So regardless of what room you're in, we may be streaming through, I think today we're streaming in 7 different platforms. So if you are streaming with us through YouTube or Facebook, I want you to know that this is actively live, right? Actively live. And if you comment, I have the ability to be able to read your comments and I can post it and interact with you real time. Okay. Now, we're also streaming through TikTok and Instagram. So I'm going to try to monitor those comments as well, but I can't actually post the comments on the screen. So forgive me with that. But you guys, this is going to be a very good discussion. Really, this is kind of like a solo show that I'm doing tonight. So it should be interesting to say the least. We've got a lot to discuss, okay, because there's just been a lot that's been happening, and much of which you all probably already know exactly where I'm going to go. But let me see, where do we want to start? Oh, look at this, just to show you guys what I'm talking about. Bam, Casey's with me. She's watching from Arizona, right? So if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, you have the ability to comment directly. Like I said, I will monitor the comments through TikTok and Instagram, but unfortunately, I won't be able to post you guys on the screen. But yeah, man, like I said, it's quite a bit for us to address. So I think where I want to start is this fun little segment that we call In the News, right? So in the news, and let's be honest, right? Like there's so much that we could talk about, but with this particular one, I think you guys probably also know where I kind of want to go with this one. And so what we'll do is we'll jump right into it, and we're going to go to the Epstein files, right? How do you not talk about this? Okay, we're going to call this segment Epstein Files. The plot thickens like cold gravy. Okay, so tonight in the never-ending soap opera that is American politics, we take a dive in a story involving Jeffrey Epstein, a now dead convicted sex offender, a bunch of nervous politicians, and surprise, Donald Trump. So here's the tea, extra dark roast. Earlier this month, Trump appointed Department of Justice released a report basically saying, yeah, Epstein definitely killed himself, and no, there's no client list. Trying, pretty much to, remove any type of access to all the powerful elites, which is kind of weird in a way. Like, he's kind of almost saying like, please stop asking questions. So cue all the chaos. Trump's own allies. We're talking MAGA influencers, right-wing podcasters, and a few congressional chihuahuas freaked out, right? People like Dan Bongino, Laura Loomer, accused Trump team of covering up the entire thing. They swore he'd expose, and it's just really getting messy, okay? Even the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a Republican, yes, the guy broke ranks for a full release of the Epstein files. Even when your own speaker is subtweeting you with legislation, things are not ideal, okay? But meanwhile, the Democrats are like, yo, let's go, okay? People have been having a ball online, and I've been cracking up, right? Introducing resolutions. They're demanding total transparency because let's be honest, right? Like they love a good scandal when it's not theirs. But Trump's response, he called Epstein boring, blamed Obama and Biden, and somehow said that the conspiracies are fake after years of basically selling them wholesale at his base. Okay, so the DOJ just released new prison footage of the Epstein cell, but almost 3 minutes were mysteriously edited. Okay, each day they were missing a minute, and of course they justified that. And right now, everything is a mess. So what I want to start with is the video that pretty much set the internet ablaze. Because if you are not familiar with this story, I don't know where you guys have been, because it has been all over my news feed, and I've been having the most fascinating time just watching people melt down, right? And try to see if they can twist themselves out of accountability. But I want you all to see where it all began, because it started here.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the death?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively, the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Okay, shut that down. Okay, that's it on Epstein is basically what they said. I mean, now come on, y'all. It's like, I'm gonna be honest, right? I'm not surprised by any of this, right? I'm not surprised by the fact that they are pivoting away from it, right? It's much of what we've already seen before, right? A lot of empty promises, getting people hyped up, only to kind of pivot and be completely held without any type of accountability because their base absolutely does not hold them accountable for anything, right? And so this was not surprising to me. I mean, it's kind of funny, to be honest with you, because the fact that he interrupted it was just like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Y'all still talk about Jeffrey Epstein? Like in the hood, that's almost like we'd be like, man, y'all still talk about old shit. You know what I mean? Like that's basically what that is, right? Like, and so, I mean, it's comical, right? I mean, it's actually hilarious. However, what has really surprised me has been that so many people on the right, and I'm talking specifically a very significant portion of like his staunch base, and I'm talking about the people that are like 10 toes down, they have been having a meltdown over the past couple of days. Now, full transparency, I don't know how sustainable it's going to be, right? Like, I think a lot of people are hoping that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. But like I told someone the other day, I said, you know what? Pause, right? Because you never know when someone might grow a new back. I think this is one of those type of situations where it's like, you know, you're almost waiting to see what's going to be the thing that's going to awaken people to, at the very least, acknowledging that a lot of what comes out of his mouth is hogwash, right? But no, you know what I mean? Like in many cases, people so staunchly want to believe in just who he has promoted himself to be, right? And they are so deeply embedded into this cult-like following that I just, you know, I don't have the most faith that this is going to be any different from anything that we've seen in the past. However, this is looking a little different, largely because you're starting to see a lot of the influencers, a lot of the journalists, I'm going to put the air quotes around journalists, are really starting to dig their heels into this particular issue, right? So I believe that it probably first started with Elon. The fact that Elon sent that tweet out a couple of weeks ago when they were having their tiff, where he pretty much made it known like, hey, listen, he's not going to release these Epstein files because he's in them right now. People are like, okay, yeah, if Elon said it, he's probably seen them. I don't think that he's seen them, but I think Elon's just not an idiot, right? Like, I mean, there's literally dozens of pictures where we see Trump very close and looking very friendly with Epstein. To Epstein's own account, the two of them were very close friends, right? He speaks about him in a very familiar, very intimate way, to where you know that they were not just colleagues, right? So to anyone that knew or believed that there was an Epstein list and did not think that Trump's name was not only front and center, but that he was probably someone who had like a +5, right? Like, he wasn't just invited to the island, right? Like he was sending out invites, y'all. It's like, miss me with this. You know what I mean? Like the fact that people were so amazed or so surprised that he's trying to pivot away from it now, it's like, what did you all expect? You know what I mean? It's so, you know, it started with Alex Jones. Alex Jones went on you know, his show and literally had tears in his eyes, right? Was dry heaving, saying that he believed he was about to vomit because he just could not believe this, which we already know that Alex Jones is a grifter. You know, stop it. He still needs to pay those families that Sandy Hook their money, right? So I don't even understand how he's still out and about and moving around, right? But you got Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has like really dug in his hooves. They had a big conservative convention over the weekend where a lot of like the main figureheads were kind of speaking on this. And so this is one of those moments where it's kind of fascinating, right? And like there's a couple of different angles that we can take it, you know. For those of you all that are familiar with the story, you know, you believe what it is that you believe, and we all pretty much already know like what is the common belief that many people that are kind of seeing this is. But I think that what I find to be the most fascinating is the fact that I'm noticing what feels like a pretty tangible break in that iron wall of like security that he kind of had, right? Like there was so many people that would defend what Trump was doing for so long that, you kind of just figured that, okay, a lot of these people are just fully in bed. They've already sold their souls. It is what it is. But you started to see the people that were kind of like center right start to peel away, right? I'm talking about like the Joe Rogans and the Andrew Schultz, like they're all kind of starting to do that, like this like little slight, backtrack. Candace Owens, like now all of a sudden you guys are able to challenge certain things that you don't like that the president does. Now, pre-election, everybody was marching in line. But now I think what they've all been trying to slowly do is I think the handwriting is on the walls that chaos is about to ensue. And what they are attempting to do is see if they can remove themselves from the stench. They don't want to be attached to it, right? I think they can tell that sooner or later, this plane starts to descend, and it's not going to be a gradual descent. It's probably going to be a nosedive. And what they want to do is like, let me go ahead and get my parachute now, and let me go ahead and see if I can hop off at this plane. So we've already seen people that were kind of in that, middle space. Like they were definitely grifting, they were definitely playing into it. But I think that now that they understand what this is looking like, they're all starting to pull back. So that to me was the first line of defense, right? Then obviously you had Elon, right? And with Elon comes a lot of gravitas because you not only have his income, but then you also have the bullhorn that he has with Twitter, right? So I knew then, okay, that's another play. Just the fact that they keep having friction, I was like, all right, that's the next thing. But what's surprising about this one is that this is that part of his party that is really deep into conspiracy theories, right? I think that this is the part of his party that generally is very unrealistic as it relates to their belief system and probably why they support him as a candidate. So when you think about what the MAGA base is comprised of, right? It's comprised of a lot of different communities. We just think that they're all just crazy or they're just all racist or something like that. And it's like, nah, like everybody has a coalition. The same way that the Democrats have a big tent, whether it be the LGBTQ community, whether it be Black people, whether it be, immigrants, the working class, typically, like, the Democrats have a coalition. Republicans, their coalition was typically Christian evangelicals. You had rich people, obviously, right? You had obviously people who, I'm not going to mince words, racist, right? Like people that were really into the dog whistle and responded to it. They kind of always understood all that subtle, bigoted language that they will oftentimes bake into their rhetoric, right? And then the loonies, like, let's just be clear, right? Because if you wasn't one of them three, then there's probably something off with you if you were voting for someone that completely went against your interests, right? But I want to say that since the emergence of Trump, right, and once we went into COVID, I think COVID radicalized a lot of people. And I also think that we got to a space where Trump was seen as the anti-establishment candidate, right? So people that were really deep into conspiracy theories, and I'm not talking about just like your average stuff. I'm talking about full-on QAnon. I'm talking about Democrats are drinking baby's blood and, Pizzagate, where they believe that if you ordered certain furniture from that one company that, you would get sent children. Like, I mean, it really went deep, right? And the only people that they believe was a part of this were Democrats. So it's like, you have that portion of the base that you couldn't really tell them anything. And because of the fact that Trump used to play into it so well, they believed him, right? Because he was saying the things that they felt no other candidate was saying. I think what they did was they completely ignored any sense of critical thinking, right? To me, I've always found it fascinating that you would think that a billionaire grifter that's been in the game for decades somehow would be the voice of the everyday working people. Like, just that alone to me has always been just the most insane thing. But I think that it was one of those things where it's like, sometimes when people say what individuals want to hear, then that's enough for them, right? As long as someone is saying what it is that they want to hear, it's like, yo, they on board, right? And so I feel like that was the party that, or the portion of the party that was very tapped into this. To Trump's credit, he always played into it, right? So we're talking back in 2022, back in 2023, you know, he was making tweets saying, why don't you release the Epstein files? It was almost like a dare. I think he knew there's no way the Biden administration releases this. For one, they couldn't, right? Because a lot of these documents were sealed, and President Biden actually followed the courts, right? Like he wasn't attempting to go rogue. Because I've seen a lot of people say that online now. Well, how come the Democrats didn't release it? Well, because the courts had sealed these documents, and until I believe it was like late 2024, they didn't even really have access to them. So unless you were going to violate that, if you were going to respect the fact that this was an ongoing trial, those documents were sealed. But even beyond that, I would not expect them to do it for a multitude of reasons. I think some sinister, to be very clear, and not necessarily because they personally were involved, but because I think that there are a lot of people that are probably implicated in these files, and the blowback is potentially catastrophic, because we're not just talking about American politicians. We're not just talking about Hollywood elite. We're talking about foreign dignitaries, right? Like we're talking about implicating a lot of other governments. And this has the potential of blowing over or blowing up and becoming a lot bigger than just something that's happening nationally. This can become an international, global fallout. And so I do believe that on some levels, there's a desire to want to protect that, even though it's sinister, even though it's very like just nasty and unfortunate, because we're talking about these acts being done to young children, and many of us that are sensible, you know, moral human beings, we want to see justice, right? So I understand everybody's desire to want to see justice, but I can understand how a government can say, you know what, just kind of gauging potential fallout, saying, you know what, like, let's pause on that. But the fact that Trump would openly use it because he knew that this was a bit of a carrot that he could use to lead his base to a destination, a bridge to nowhere, basically. I think that is what pulled a lot of those people in. And so, you know, a lot of times when it comes, especially like to presidential elections, you have a lot of what people call like one topic voters, you know what I'm saying? Where they are only here for one specific reason, right? Some people, it might be, birth, freedom, rather it be, what am I trying to say? You all know what I'm talking about, like the right, pro-life. I'm sorry, pro-life. You have some people like if they get deeply ingrained in that space, that may be the only reason that they are voting, because they feel so passionately about it that it's like it carries everything else. They don't care about, like, especially if you kind of feel like I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. My bank account remains the same, whether there's a Democrat or a Republican in office. You know, they can get on one particular subject and just be like, yo, this is the reason why I'm voting for this person. And I think that there was a healthy portion of his base that was here because of this belief that there was going to finally be justice, right, for all of these dirty Democrats. And the fact that Trump was ringing that bell, they was all on board, right? And even after he got in office, they were still ringing that bell. Like, that's the part that I think kind of throws me. It's like, why wouldn't you pivot? What, like, after you got in office, that would have been the logical time to pivot, to kind of like dampen, you know, the flames a little bit, right? I think I'm just amazed at the fact that they kept going hard, right? As if you all just thought they were just going to let it go. So for Trump to be sitting in that meeting all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? Like just a month and some change ago, they were saying that Pam Bondi literally had the files on her desk. That's what she said, man, I'm reviewing them now. So like people have been waiting. They've been salivating for them. And so for all of a sudden for you to just be like, man, y'all still talk about this in a pivot away, they are not having it. They are not having it. And so what's going to be interesting is going to be kind of paying attention to the fallout, right? Like, and is this something that will be sustainable? I don't think everybody cares, to be clear, you know, but as I pointed out before, you've already seen certain people, like you've seen a slight hemorrhaging of what he would consider to be his base. And now this is that portion of the base that were like ride or die, right? So the moment that they start questioning things, the moment that your allies become your adversaries, that's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to be interesting for a multitude of reasons, but largely because of the fact that one thing that Trump does not deal well with is criticism. But when he's getting it from the Democrats, he can kind of hide behind that and then use it to galvanize his base. But what happens when it's your base that's poking holes in you? What happens when it's all the people that you've been riding with are poking holes in you? I think that you're going to slowly start to see him unravel, right? And I think that for all the Republicans that have honestly not been happy with the fact that he's had their party by the short and curlies, many of them are going to seize this opportunity to start to move themselves into position, and like in the void that gets created, they're going to want to seize some of that power, right? Because I know that they want their party back. So you all stay tapped in. It's going to be very fascinating to witness like just how this all plays out. Here we go. Casey said, I hope no one starts talking about it. If he can keep saying the 2020 election was stolen. Right. We can keep talking about this. Right. No, listen, I completely agree. This is one of those things where it's like, yo, I don't know if it's going to go away. I do think that what will end up happening is Trump knows how to smoke screen and create diversions. I can see him creating a diversion. And inside of this diversion, it's going to be hard to focus on the Epstein files if it really is something that is like urgent and pressing, something military or war, something that threatens our safety, something that threatens national security, right? Hopefully people can walk and chew gum, because if we see that occur and we believe that that was a bit of a diversion, I'm just hoping that people don't take the carrot, that they don't take the bait, So it's been fascinating to watch this whole thing play out, but we'll see how it all plays out. Now, on to the next topic, okay? We are going to call this next one Angel Reese versus RG3, okay? Who asked you, Robert? Now, this story combines bad decisions, unsolicited opinions, and Shaquille O'Neal threatening bodily harm. Yes, we're talking about the former NFL quarterback turned chaos podcaster Robert Griffin III, who somehow managed to make himself the main character in a conversation about Angel Reese and racism on the internet. Because why not, right? RG3 reposted a disgusting racist image targeting Reese in the name of condemning it, of course, because nothing says I'm against this like giving it a bigger platform. But wait, it gets better. He also claimed that someone from Reese's inner circle told him that she hates WNBA phenom Caitlin Clark. Reese denied it immediately. Her mom also called BS, and then the internet exploded. Ryan Clark dragged him. Brandon London called him a cloud chaser. And then Shaq, yes, the illustrious Shaquille O'Neal, threatened to punch RG3 square in the face, because sometimes the only logical response to nonsense is violence, right? So we'll break it all down, how it started, who's lying, and whether RG3 will make it out of this week without catching metaphorical and literal hands. Now, I want to first and foremost say that I am not going to show the meme that he posted, right? Because it's just one of those things that's disgusting, and it's one of those things where you say to yourself, man, like, I'm ready for this guy to just keep this woman's name out of his mouth. I don't even understand the allure, okay? So this story has been trending for about 5 days now. I want to read what the actual tweet said, okay? Now, I'm reading it verbatim. It says, all right, this has to stop. There is no place for racism in this world, whether you like a player or not. Angel Reese should never be called or depicted as a monkey. I have been quiet on the Angel Reese front because she shared a video that aided in my wife kids, family, and friends receiving death threats, threats of physical harm to my family and friends, and threats of sexual violence to my children on social media and beyond. That will never be okay with me. I never attacked her or her family when I stated and backed up with clear basketball evidence that Angel Reese hates Caitlin Clark. It's sports. Everybody won't like each other. People in Angel's inner circle called me and told me I was right. And Angel Reese has grown to hate Caitlin Clark because the media always is asking about her, always asking her about Caitlin Clark and being constantly compared to her. Some people made it about race, but I never did and never will. Instead of becoming the villain in anyone's story, I decided to just not. All that being said, Angel Reese or any black man or woman should never be called or depicted as a monkey, ever. Stop it. If you hate Angel Reese because she is black, you are the problem. If you hate Angel Reese because you are a Caitlin Clark fan, don't turn it racial. There should be no space for racism in this world. Now, you all, he posted this at 7:03 a.m. in the morning. Who wakes up early in the morning with this heavily on their spirit? Okay, this is just a couple of days ago, July 10th. So he posts all of this and then he shares a tweet, right? Like I said, I'm not going to show it, but it was of Caitlin Clark's NBA 2K. You know, she just recently got the cover. And, you know, it was a dope ass cover, but they removed her and I guess used AI and they had a monkey in her place. Now, it's like, RG3, come on, bro. Like, what are we doing? Like, seriously, what are we doing? The person whose account that he posted it from allegedly only had 200 followers, and the post only had maybe 6,000 views at that point. But RG3, with 2.2 million followers, decided to give it a major boost of attention. And as of right now, it's sitting at 8.8 million views. So it's like, okay, bro, like kudos for attempting to try to take the high road. But really, we know what you were trying to do, right? You was just trying to get that off because you're still salty about the way that you got dragged the last time that you decided to go at her. And this was your little slick way of, you know, trying to take the higher road while low-key posted in a bigoted meme. And I mean, and you just say to yourself, it's like, if there was any doubt that the first go round, his actions were motivated by something less than just sports reporting, following up with this, once again, you all, at 7:03 a.m., okay, this man woke up early in the morning, washed his face, put his head in you know, the water with the ice cubes, and was like, yeah, let me go ahead and post this. Like, probably had been sitting there thinking about this all night, couldn't wait to get this one off, right? So obviously the internet's been doing what the internet does, but Shaq was recently on a podcast where he had some words, okay? So I just want to go ahead and play for you guys what Shaq had to say about this, because he clearly was not very pleased.
RG3, tweet another monkey post about my girl Angel Reese. I'm punching your fucking face. Okay? It's enough. Like, I don't usually do stuff like this, but just stop it, bro. You got your job, you got your podcast, leave my Angel Reese alone. I'm the one calling her and telling her not to respond. Fucking stop it. That's the last time. Okay? Thank you. It's not real hate. If you look around what's going on in this real country, that's hate. This is sports. I'm not supposed to like you. It's a shame that all the stuff you did in your life, you're going to be remembered for your podcast. You're going to be remembered for your podcast. That should tell you you're not that fucking great. I don't want to be remembered for Shaq's Bit podcast. I do not. Like, leave those girls alone. You already spoke on it. Let it go. So what? He hates her. So fucking what? I hate you now for messing with her. Now what? Say something about me. But she's not going to respond because I'm the one calling her and be like, baby, keep it classy. Because she's not soft by any means. You're from the streets. But I'm like, you're beautiful. Don't indulge with these fools because he's a fool. You don't even have G14 classification to say that. I would respect it more if Lisa Leslie said it. Like, that's your category. Stay out of them people's category. Okay, you're sports, whatever you do, you talk about sports, but bro, You don't need to be going deep. Y'all can go deep. Y'all are females. Y'all understand what that's like. If he hates her, so what? Mind your business. Like, I don't mind you doing your job as anyone, but don't pick on that little girl. Because guess what? I'm her protector. Now pick on me. You pick on me, I'm going to punch you in your fucking face.
Yo, all right. Now I'm gonna be honest. Okay, I'll be honest. Now, I probably should have gave y'all a heads up that there was some language, but it's nighttime and we adults, so I figured we can let it fly. I'm gonna be real, man. I appreciated that. I really did. I really appreciated that. I think that there are times where you just got to call timeout, right? And I feel like he's been getting, he been getting quite a few off. He's been getting quite a few off. But also, if we're just gonna keep it a buck, I think I'm waiting to start seeing more people in our community check the foolishness, right? Like, I literally got hyped when I saw that. I literally got amped because I was like, okay, finally, we're gonna have a black man of influence that can start calling out the bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm starting to feel like I don't even recognize the world anymore, right? And I mean, it's been like this for a minute now, if we just gonna keep it a buck. But I feel like when I came up, we had a degree of like a code, we had a code, and it's making me wonder, where's that code? You know what I'm saying? Like where is the code? Where are we at now where we can't call out foolishness? Anytime that a person comes and takes the defense of a black woman, immediately you're called a simp. Or someone is saying, oh man, stop caping for them. And what's crazy is I know that this is not how all black men feel. I know that there are many of them that do feel very similar to how I do. And I, too, at a point was someone that was like, you know what? I don't have time to argue with idiots on the internet. It's almost like that old saying goes when they say, you got to be careful about, arguing with idiots, because from a distance, people can't tell the difference, and me being the type of person that I am, I didn't want to get caught in an online situation that could sometimes have real world, real life ramifications. You know what I mean? And so I was someone that was just like, yeah, I'm above that. Kind of like taking the Jay-Z approach, if you know what I'm getting at. People was always taking shots at him. And sometimes when you ain't got time to, get into the mess and be fighting with people and, arguing and just silly internet shit, you just kind of, yeah, I'm gonna take my hands off of this, right? Like I'm gonna rise above this. But I'm starting to realize that I don't think that is always the most prudent choice any longer, right? Because in our absence, in the real ones not speaking up, what happens is that we leave this entire domain to be ruled by the trolls, right? We leave this entire domain to be ruled by the trolls. And it's like, it's unfortunate. So my question is, will the real ones please stand up, right? Will the real ones please stand up? Like, that's really what this is all about, okay? Like, where are we at now? Where are we at now? Why can't we call out the bullshit? Why can't we call it out, right? Like, it's time for us to stop being silent. It's time for us to start acknowledging when someone is operating in a way that is counterproductive to our culture. And I'm speaking specifically to black men. I ain't speaking to nobody else, right? Because I didn't grow up as a white man. I didn't grow up as an Indian man. I didn't grow up as any other kind of race. I grew up as a black man. And so I know how I was raised in my family. I know the code that I saw my father move. I know the code of how my friends moved, the community that I was a part of. And then I even knew just looking at content, right? Like, I mean, even growing up, when you thought about the gangs had a code. They used to have structure, right? There was certain things you just couldn't do, or you was going to get violated by the heads of the gangs. Yeah, they might have been in some street activity, but they still had a code. And it's like, as we just continue to evolve or grow, that code has pretty much been obliterated. But I know it's still real cats out here. You know what I'm saying? And it's time for us to get off the bench. It's time for us to get off the sideline. It's time for us to start to be more vocal and start calling out the bullshit. Because see, what ends up happening is, and this is when I decided to start being more vocal. It was dualfold. I think one, it was recognizing that there are a lot of Black women that do not feel protected. And when they say that, it's not always a byproduct of not feeling physically protected or like not having like, a dad or, uncles or homies or whatever. But it was like from the community at large, and when you think about what social media is, I think it's like we all began from this space where it was like, oh, that's just social media. Oh, that's just Facebook, And so we would downplay it. We would downplay people trolling. We would downplay a lot of like the back and forth. We would downplay people talking shit sometimes, because in our minds, it's like, that's just Facebook. That's not real life. But as I always say, like the stuff that happens online has real world consequences. It leaves residue. And so if every time that you hop online, all you're seeing is that you're being attacked and the people that primarily are attacking you look just like you. Yeah, I can understand how over a period of time you start to say, yeah, we are not protected at all. And you kind of feel like you're fending for yourself, or it's women protecting other women, right? And so that was the first thing. But then the second thing was I started realizing that in the absence of the real ones speaking up and being vocal, you got a lot of impressionable people that are out there, and all they're left to take cues from are the trolls, right? The incels, the people who were lame, right? Initially, and hopped online, and through trolling, they were able to raise their clout. And so now they're perceived as having being more popular. And now other impressionable men are taking their cues from lame niggas, right? And so I'm like, damn, like that right there, not only does it create a gap, but if we're not careful, we'll start to be severely outnumbered. You know what I mean? Because if the fake ones are the ones that's training up the next generation, then that means that the next generation is going to be a ton of fake ones, right? So, I mean, it's like real ones are going to be a dying breed, right? And we know this. Cats that's real, we know that we are a dying breed. But what I'm starting to realize is a bit of that is because of our own doing. A bit of that is because of our willingness to sometimes disengage, our willingness to be hands off in these situations. As much as I try to not tell a person what they should be doing, or how a person should be spending their time, how a person should be using their voice, because I do understand that like activism looks different for a lot of people, and different people engage with the community in a multitude of ways, right? Like this is something that I firmly believe in. But I'm gonna be honest, man, when I even just see the way that things are looking right now, like politically and the whole nine, I'm consistently upset and disappointed with a lot of people. A lot of y'all, I'm gonna be honest, like at all levels, but sometimes even specifically those of us that have influence, those of us that have platforms. You know what I mean? It's like with all of this stuff that's happening in this world, I'm not expecting you to, hop on your podium and to become Minister Farrakhan, right? But it's a lot of absurdity that's occurring right now. And everybody's just casually going on about their business. And, I've spoken about this in the past. Sometimes I say to myself, I hope you're having these conversations with someone, right? Because I hope we know that just because we're trying to ignore it doesn't mean it's going to go away, right? Ignoring it does not absolve you of being affected by it, and this is one of those things where it's like, I hope that we're not going to look back at this period a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and wish that we can hop in a time machine and come back to this period so that we can fight the way that we probably should be fighting, so that we can actually give a damn and not just throw our hands in the sky as if somehow this situation is going to solve itself. Because the reality of it is you may not want to put in the work, but I guarantee you that the opposition is. The opposition is putting in work, right? And I'm not saying put yourself in a situation where you're jeopardizing your livelihood, where you're jeopardizing, your ability to be able to, earn a living, jeopardizing your safety. But I'm like, there's got to be some kind of middle ground, right? Between being front lines on the protest, and laying your body on the line and just being completely hands off as if you have no idea or that you don't see the foolishness that's occurring, right? There's got to be some middle ground. There's got to be some way that we can start to incorporate our voices, to just add a little bit more balance to the force, right? I'm gonna play this next clip. That's actually kind of interesting because I just happened to run past this, right? I can't even remember where I ran past it, but I thought that this was fascinating for this particular topic, considering, where we just started with Shaq being very clear and making it very known how he felt about this. So just peep this.
Is my preference is not my women. Now, I thought it was I'm not dating my women, period, which is the corniest human being outside of a criminal to me, period. Those are your roots. Those women are reflected in your roots. So if you're saying, hey, I don't generally date them, but I have more space for it, even though I still think it's a little corny.
Akash only dates brown.
Yeah,
Akash has been with one girl in his life who is his wife.
That's my wife. That's an
So
Indian
this
woman.
is
that was
like
important
loyal
to me.
through and through.
Okay.
And I understand it's not as important for y'all, but as an Indian, there's not a lot of us who are famous. So whether you like it or not, people are looking at you as a role model. You guys have established yourselves as role models. From simps to pimps, which is another motto I find kind of corny, but I looked into what you guys are about. And a lot of the shit is just childish, which is fine if you want to be funny. We just talk about how doctors ain't shit for 45 minutes. We are not in any way life coaching. We are not in any way trying to help men outside of, hey, come have a laugh for a couple hours. If you're going to paint yourself as life coaches and then say, like, my preference is, which is honestly is, I don't want to date black girls. That's the way every black dude that fucks girls says it. I've dated black girls in my life. All right, bruh. Who the fuck hasn't? Except me. You know what I mean? Everybody gonna dabble in everything. It is the mentality that I have an issue with. And Alex is upset with the specific words, true, but underneath it, he's upset with the mentality. And a lot of stuff you guys say in general, I think is stuff that's kind of childish. I saw a clip where you were like, oh, the nuclear family's falling apart. What do? I don't get married. Just don't get married. You're actually trying to help men, or you talking to fucking incels who are 18 years old? That's some shit you say to college. I'm gonna turn you from a simp to a pimp. All right, bro. Can we grow up? You guys are self-help. Hey, we're trying to help men. So either we're funny or help men and be real and be honest with yourselves and don't have an ego like, no, I have a preference. Be honest. Let's just be mature about what we feel. And part of that maturity is, yeah, it was a bad joke. I don't actually feel exactly that way.
Interesting. So, for those of you that don't know, the two gentlemen that they were talking to are on a podcast. I believe it's called Fresh and Fit. Okay. And, they are a part of what they consider to be like that manosphere, that group of individuals that, it's not quite a relationship podcast, but they talk a lot about it, and they're kind of in that same vein as like the Andrew Tates, the very anti-woman, kind of, podcast bros, the passport bros. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the DNA that they kind of come from, right? But like, it's a lot of their content is cringeworthy, to just put it plainly, And when you look at these dudes, regardless of their numbers, because somewhere on Instagram they got over probably 1.5 million subscribers, right? But like their clips, especially in the past, would get traction, because they're tapped into that angry, male, young, they call them incels, right? Which stands for involuntarily celibate. But they tap into that frame of thinking, right? They tap into that pain. And I recall that there was some controversy involving them maybe about a year or so ago where they ended up getting demonetized by YouTube. Like that's how vitriolic their content can be at times. It got to the point where YouTube was just like, yeah, we're not going to deplatform you, but we can't monetize you any longer. And they were really, bothered by that. Like they were really hurt because I think that they were doing pretty good. Now, I don't know if they've been able to right their wrongs and get it back, but seeing that clip I thought was pretty fascinating, right? Because that was Andrew Schultz podcast, and I guess they had them on as guests. Now, I did not watch the entire conversation, but I said to myself, yo, this is kind of fascinating that you got an Indian guy that's only had, only been with one woman, right? Never dated Black women, that's riding harder for sisters than many of the brothers that I see, right? Because it's very seldom that you see anybody hold these guys to task like that. And I'm not saying nobody does, but I'm saying I felt like, yo, that's pretty courageous. That's pretty bold to bring them on your podcast and to give them a bit of a lashing. You know what I'm saying? And just calling them out for the bullshit that they're on. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many people right now that are grifting, that are taking advantage of real emotions that people feel. You know what I mean? Like I'm not someone that really wants to lean in too heavily on the pain that people do feel in that space. I think it's unfortunate, as I was saying a moment ago, that the only voices that they can go to are the fresh and fit. It's like they present the issue, they tap into the pain, and then all they do is just keep churning it, right? And throwing gasoline on the fire. And that's kind of what my man's was saying when he was just like, yo, like, you'll bring up a certain topic and then you'll just be like, yeah, the solution is don't get married, and it's like, okay, how is that actually helping people? Because you all don't present yourself as like a comedy podcast. You all actually, it's called Fresh and Fit. So it's almost like you guys are positioning yourself as if you're attempting to build men up. But the reality of it is all you're doing is tearing them down. It's that exact same grift that the president is doing right now, right? Where it's like, I'm going to tap into this thing that's actually important to you. I know some of you all actually want to see justice. I know some of you all actually want to, push against pedophilia and people that would take advantage of children. So I'm going to tap into that frustration and I'm just going to lie to you, right? Because oftentimes when people are in a state like that, when they're feeling pain and they're vulnerable, they don't always think critically because they're thinking emotionally, right? So if a person is in a space where they feel lonely, if a person is in a space where they, desire something and they're having a hard time, connecting, with women, and then, you got social media. Social media has been out here and it's polarizing everything, right? So everything online is built to get us arguing with one another, right? And so it's almost like we're more invested in the conflict than we are the actual solution. And what's unfortunate, and I've been saying this probably because I've really started keying into it about a year ago, where I really started realizing like, yo, like, it'd be one thing if people was just going back and forth or whatever, on some troll shit, and they were actually in a good space. They actually had a lady or was enjoying their lives. That would be one thing. But I was like, I'm sensing something else. And what I'm sensing is that people actually desire more. They're actually in a state of like pain. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate to watch individuals that have these platforms, utilize them in the way to further lead these people astray and create more division, right? And so, like I said a moment ago, to go ahead and just put it up again, man. Oh, nope, not that one. Will the real ones please stand up, right? Like it's almost like a call. It's almost like a call. Like, if you consider yourself real, I'm not saying you gotta get a podcast, but I'm saying, like, we need to start getting ourselves into a space where we're a little more vocal, right? Like, where we are influencing the world that we're living in. Because if we continue to keep this shit on cruise control and to keep our hand off the wheel, it's not going to turn out the way that we desire it to, right? It just isn't, And so, yeah, man, like, this is really one of them situations where it's like, look, I'm a pivot slightly. And this one right here isn't even about like relationship stuff. But as we talking about, will the real ones please stand up? I just want to show you something real quick, okay? This, like I said, it's gonna feel like a slight pivot, but just follow me with this.
The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. What you are not being told by the media anywhere is that the death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI. This Texas tragedy is just the latest example. It's not just incompetence. This is DEI working to undermine meritocratic institutions, and more people likely died than otherwise would have because of DEI.
I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you could just say anything nowadays, okay? Now, that's Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk tours the nation, and ask me where he primarily goes. To colleges and universities, right? And he has this whole speaking tour, and I can't think of what the name of it is, but it was like something Turning Point America or something. It's got something it's one of those very pro-America type things, Winning Back America. I can't think of what the name of it is, but his primary audience are people that just entered adulthood, right? So when they're the most impressionable. So he is building his entire brand on attempting to bring new people into his fold, right? But the reason I'm showing you this, because I just want to show you this real quick, okay? Just for context. Look at this. Yo, I'm gonna play that one again, okay? Just because I feel like you really need to look at this. Why are we taking cues from somebody that shoots basketballs like that? Okay. This is the dude that is traveling nationwide and informing and influencing the youth, right? This is what I'm getting at, okay? So once again, man, because I'm telling you, I got to keep going back to it, man. Will the real ones please stand up? Because if we do not stand up, man, then what ends up happening is you get folks like this, man. And I'm telling you, I cannot show this thing enough, because to me, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's like, is this really who we want? Look at that. Put yourself in the face, okay? This is who is traveling the nation, got all this influence, got millions of followers, okay? This is what happens when the real ones don't stand up, right? You have people like that leading, you know what I mean? And then we look up and we find ourselves in this clusterfuck of a situation. We're like, how do we get here? One step at a time, right? Because while they were grabbing ears and grabbing eyes and, pushing their agenda, we were too busy fighting about trans people playing sports in college, You know what I mean? Like just foolish stuff. We were too busy hung up on the fact that Kamala had the audacity to do her job and a few people got locked up, right? While she was the district attorney. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, y'all. So like while we infighting and we caught up in our nonsense, that's who we got leading the next wave, right? The fresh and fit guys, right? Like that's who's influencing the next wave of individuals, the impressionable people, the people who honestly are in search of like real world solutions, right? Like that are honestly looking for someone that they could share space with. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like we've gotten to a space, man, where a lot of people have forgotten how. But yeah, man, no, this is gonna be a plea that I'm gonna continue to make. So now on to this next segment, war on reality, right? Y'all, I'm gonna show you this, and I'm not even gonna set this up. I'm gonna just go ahead and play it, and then we'll dive into it.
We gon' get it poppin' like Louisiana cooking grease. Popeyes drop the chicken rapping, it's a classic in the streets. I'm about this chicken minding business, I don't want no beef. Clowns got back to rapping, it was cool, but it ain't moving me.
We are not the same, I've been the favorite, so I let you cook. Popeyes got it locked, the streets agree, and that's a major look.
We just do it better, stacking cheddar, yeah, we eating good.
Breaded and it's battered, yeah, I know our chickens got you shook.
You can bite our raps, but know the recipe is different.
Yeah, they want the sauce, we'll make it spicy like your mentions.
If they think it's sweet, we'll add a lemonade and biscuits. Food be tasting funny when the clown is in the kitchen. Food be tasting funny when the clown is in the kitchen. Food be tasting funny when the clown is in the kitchen. Food be tasting funny when the clown is in the kitchen. Food be tasting funny when the clown is in the kitchen.
Okay. So now to go ahead and actually read what the ad said, because this is an ad that was done by Popeyes, obviously. It says, to all the clowns in the kitchen, it's time to put down the chicken. We just dropped the first ever AI diss track music video, and the rap battle is on. Right? They got their little code for you to get a free rap and blah, 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 blah. So, okay. Now, this is going to be one of the moments where I'm probably going to sound like I'm doing the most, or I'm like, like, it ain't that serious. Sometimes that's how people come at you. Like, it ain't that serious, man. It's just blase, blase, blah. And it's like, all right. Reason I'm going to call this one War on Reality is because, I've been saying a lot over the past couple of weeks that we are going to have to fight for reality on so many levels, right? So that was an AI-generated commercial. Okay, complete AI. We're not talking about AI came up with the words, AI gave them the direction. No, we're saying everything that you watch was digital. Okay, it was not camera people. Those weren't real people. I don't even believe that anyone created that song. That could have been completely AI generated, because they have the capacity to do that now. And oh man, we're in such a dangerous space right now, right? Especially for the creative, for the artist, we're in such a dangerous space, right? Because when I see that, the first thing I see is beyond the cosplaying, and it was funny reading some of the comments. Some people was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know why, but this feels a little racist, which kind of made me laugh a little bit, because I was like, yeah, a little bit, but whatever. They're cosplaying the culture, right? So like in times past, if they were going to do a video like that, regardless even how we felt about it as a community, you would have had Black writers, you would have had Black producers, you would have had Black people that you hired as actors in order to participate in this. So even if it was something that we weren't necessarily happy about as a community, where we kind of felt like they were, as we sometimes say, it was cooning. Even if it wasn't that, right? Or even if it was that, we would still feel like, well, at least some people earned a check, right? At least some brothers and sisters earned a check from it. But now we're in the space where they can tap into our culture, they can market to us, and they don't have to have any of our input or our influence whatsoever, right? And so, we can look at that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, it was a playful, it was a fun commercial. But see, that's just the pregame, right? They haven't even begun. Last week I talked about this one page that I saw where it's like an AI video page, and they created a character, and the character was a black woman in a bonnet driving an Altima, and she had this Altima doing all kinds of crazy shit, right? Like it was like the Altima Chronicles or something like that, right? It was kind of, it was a little comical, to be honest with you. Like when you look at it, it was like, okay, some of these jokes are kind of funny, but I couldn't even really bring myself to laugh much because I was just like, yo, like this is dangerous, right? Like everything about this is reckless, because I'm almost positive, once again, that there were no black people that was involved in the creation of this. So that means that somewhere there was like a white or an Indian coder that just had this funny idea, because maybe they're a fan of hip hop. Maybe they, follow the Shade Room and Baller Alert. And so they're a little versed on our culture, they feel like they got access. And now that they understand technology, sometimes a little bit better than we do, they can go in and they can just start creating whatever machination, their mind can create. And then they can push this content in front of us. And regardless of whether or not we know it's AR or it's not, there's something that's very dangerous about what these types of images do when they're broadcasted in the media, especially when it's not balanced, right? It'd be one thing if we had a whole bunch of like Barack Obama types out there that was getting a lot of attention. And then you said, okay, yeah, it's cool to have a little bit of it, but it's like, nah. Like if 95% of the content that starts to reach people is content like that, right? Whether or not we want to acknowledge it, that is going to influence how people perceive us as professionals, as business owners, as just individuals that are worthy of you taking or recognizing our value, right? And I see it as a double issue. On one level, I see it as them being able to strip us of our earning capacity, because let's be clear, being black, especially being black in America, one of our biggest exports is our culture, right? And in order to be able to tap into our culture in times past, you had to be dealing with someone. You had to be, like there were agencies, that marketing agencies where if you wanted to appeal to the black community, 9 times out of 10, you were going with one of these agencies, you know what I'm saying? That had the insight, that understood the culture, that can give you access to the artists and the creatives that were pronounced in the culture, that knew how to do it in a tasteful way where it wouldn't just be immediately pushed back. They don't necessarily have to do that anymore. So that means that all of our marketing agencies, all of our producers, right, all of our content creators, they now have the ability to sidestep us. And I know on some level, it's like, oh, well, y'all can create your own thing. And it's like, yes, we can. And yes, we will. But I just don't like the idea that the group of individuals that represent 72, 73% of America can easily tap into the culture without any cosign from us whatsoever, and then remove us from the financial equation completely, right? And then it's almost like if we push back, like, what are we going to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you even push back against something like that, right? It's such a dangerous space that we find ourselves in. And when I saw, because of the fact that I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and I'm gonna continue, because like this AI shit is picking up. I don't have a solution just yet, but I know on an individual level, it is imperative that we fight for reality. And that's why I phrase it like that. I always frame the conversation like that. Like, we are going to have to fight for reality, right? Which means, I go into the comments, and it was mostly people that was like, oh man, McDonald's, you got 24 hours to respond. Like, yeah, there was a couple of people that might have pushed back a little bit, but by and large, it was almost like people didn't even recognize how absolutely dangerous that was, right? Just even the fact that Popeyes feels comfortable with pushing it. So that lets me know that our community is so fractured right now that they can push it. And even those of us that knows this bullshit, they can push it with impunity. They can push it, didn't even have any concern about whether, and then I saw Wendy's in the chat going back and forth, and I'm like, see, here we go, right? Here we go. Because Wendy's been on that. I've long hoped that there was some, black person that was running their social media handle. But now I'm like, if it was, they probably let them go, and they got ChatGPT doing it. Man, I need something to sound like a sassy black woman to respond to this. I need a sharp tweet to do X, Y, and Z, right? Because everybody's got access to this. And AI, it's been downloading our culture for the past couple of years. So it knows our voice, because now that we're using it, we're helping the language model get more efficient, right, at duplicating who we are. And so it's but a matter of time, man, before we are removed from the equation. And that is going to be a fascinating thing to witness, because, Black people create the culture. Once you have something artificial attempting to cosplay us and create the culture, I don't see anything good coming from that. I don't see anything good coming from that. Like, I can look at it from a space of how it's potentially going to affect us financially, but I think from a cultural perspective, it's going to even further tip things off of its axis. Because one thing about Black people is that, we typically are grounded, especially as it relates to just even certain elements like social activism, right? And just understanding what the pulse of society is. But once you have something that's artificial, that's manipulating the pulse of society, you know what I mean? So now we're going to go ahead and make a quick segue away from the video. So, I always do this segment called Stay Out of the Comments, right? But this one is going to be a little different, right? Because, since we're into this war on reality, I'm going to just kind of stay inside of this space, and I've said over the past couple of months that, one of my new guilty pleasures is the social media app Threads, right? It's a lot of fun for me. And right now the algorithm is algorithming, okay? For me at least, right? I don't follow many people, but it knows what I like, and it's been serving it up. And so I kind of like the community that I've become a part of, right? So it like I said, it knows what I enjoy, right? Whether it be the ratchet or the conscious, you know what I'm saying? Or the borderline militant, it's not attempting to get me confrontational with people. And every once in a while, you'll see something that'll come up inside of like what they call the dating threads, right? So I recently saw this post, and it said, I accidentally sent him a screenshot of our chat instead of sending it to my friend. But I didn't panic, and I added, reread your messages and think about the nonsense you're saying. So I thought that was hilarious, right? Because I don't know if you ever done that. I actually have done that before. I actually have accidentally sent a screenshot to someone. Well, I meant to send it to someone else, but I sent it to the person who I was ready to talk some shit about. Now, luckily, I didn't talk shit about them. I just sent the message and I recognized it right when it went off. So, I can't even remember how I cleaned it up, but I was able to play it off. You know what I'm saying? And in those moments, you always just say to yourself, okay, you need to be a little more cautious because that was a little sloppy. But as you see, this particular thread, it got some pretty good traction, right? I mean, we're talking well over 250,000 views, 382,000 views. So, as always, people start tapping in and they start sharing how they feel about it, right? This one said, let me write this down, sis. Someone else said, oh no, they had the picture of Leonardo DiCaprio holding the reverse, the Uno reverse. Someone said the quick thinking. You had another one. Oop, I just know your stomach fell out your ass when you realized what happened. Speaking from personal experience. Had someone else that said, I once sent a voice note to my now ex that was meant for my friend. It was something along the lines of, not he live in a 4-bedroom house. He got money, but it only got 2.5 baths. That's dumb. Why not 3? So she was just being messy. She got caught talking shit about somebody's crib or whatever, but that's funny though. She said, I did this once and thank God my battery was dying. And I said, do you see what you're wasting my battery life on? See, that's creative, right? I got to give props to people that know how to think on their feet, right? There's somebody else that said, this happened to me years ago, but I didn't notice it until he texted me back. And I said, I think you meant to send this to somebody else. I hit him with, nah, I wanted to show you exactly where you had me fucked up. And I ain't gonna lie, that was elite, okay? That was elite, okay? Every once in a while, you got somebody that just know how to think on their feet. That was elite. That was brilliant. Okay. So I salute to the sister that came up with that one. I thought that this one was pretty poignant. Someone said, I did this once and sent a whole text with it. And I had a whole panic attack and followed it with, I'm so sorry. That was for so-and-so. I'm just so frustrated today with this convo and I'm trying to get some other opinions. I was scared because my exes would have blown it up. I mean, because my exes would have blown it up and would have been a whole big thing. But my now husband said, I get it. I'm sorry. I'm making you feel that way and I'll do better. I promise. The way my entire being relaxed and I cried more because I wasn't expecting it. See, I thought that was beautiful, right? And that just goes to show how sometimes, when you're dealing with the right person, situations just have a way of working themselves out, right? I think sometimes we're always trying to force a square peg into a circle hole, or we always believe that we have to be perfect in a situation, and we don't. Because even if you did everything correct, even if you did everything right, but you're with the wrong person, it doesn't matter. It's not going to work out. The same way that you can literally mistake your way into success if you are doing the thing that is in alignment with who you are, right? And so, if you're with the right person, you don't have to worry about being perfect all the time. You don't have to worry about minor mistakes or, little goofy tendencies or idiosyncrasies that you may have, things that you may be embarrassed about, your significant other may find adorable, or they may actually love those little quirks that you consider to be imperfections, right? When you're with the right person and you guys are in alignment, right? You guys are evenly yoked. You don't have to worry as much about being perfect, right? And that goes for situations outside of just romantic relationships. It's any kind of relationship, right? It's any kind of thing that you're doing. If you are doing something that is in alignment with the universe, something that God ordained, they say, let no man put asunder, you know what I'm saying? That's how it kind of plays out, right? So you can know everything. You could have all your notes. You can have the perfect presentation, but if that was not a deal that you were meant to close, it kind of don't matter, right? The same way that there are sometimes, man, that, like I said, you literally stumble and mistake your way to success because it really wasn't about you. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever it was that you was doing was in alignment, with the universe, right? And so I really appreciated the way that she shared that, because it was just like, okay, that's kind of dope. Now, I then saw, because I'm scrolling, right? So I'm scrolling, I'm seeing all the comments or whatever. So, you see that, and, man, it was dope ass comment section, right? And like I told you, over 250,000 views, Shorty got good response. But then I see this right here, right? So hold on, let me go ahead and pull this up. So check this out. Right? Now, to give you some insight on what we're looking at. Now, to give you some insight, right, on what that was someone that took the original woman's post and she threw it into Google, okay? And what she came up with was a ton of other people that had posted the exact same thing. So each one of those posts that you see is someone else that use that exact same, I'm talking verbatim, right? So what you initially thought was like this, very tongue-in-cheek, humorous story ended up being a grift. It ended up being content that someone just plagiarized from another creator, and it's just wild to see that so many other people have used it, right? Like, one thing if it's like one or two people have stolen it. No, as you scrolling through that, it was every bit of like 12, 13 people that had popular posts that used the exact same thing, right? So when I saw that, me personally, it made me feel a little different about the post, right? Like now all of a sudden I'm like, well, shit. I was like, I was into the creativity of the person that originally posted it, and now I feel duped, and I don't know if that's fair that I do feel duped, but I was curious when I saw the responses to the woman that posted that video. So, first one, I've actually said and done, and I know I've actually said, done, and said something similar before, and I didn't have to Google it. So what's your point? Someone else said, did you really? Ew. Someone else, this was a weird ass thing to do, don't you think? Someone else, can't people just have fun? Slow down there, cracker, right? So underneath that post, the majority of the people that were responding to that kind of was looking at Shorty like she was a killjoy, right? Almost like a how dare you? How dare you ruin our good time? We were having a blissfully ignorant good time, and you decided to come up in here with the truth, right? And that goes back into what I was saying a moment ago. Will the real ones please stand up, right? Not only that, but then also war on reality. This one is both. This is both, right? A war on reality. This is what I mean by when I say that we're having a war on reality, and why it becomes so important for you to recognize what the war is going to look like, right? Because there are times where we know the truth, we see the truth, but we prefer the lie, right? We prefer the lie. Now, if you saw someone tried to out Shorty or whatever, you could have kept it moving. But they came in and defended the lie, right? They defended the lie and got mad at them, like, which tells me one of a few things. Either you don't care about whether something is factual or not, or you do it yourself, right? Which means that you're invested in the grift. And so when I say a war on reality, it's not just a matter of like our resistance to those who are being fake, but it's also like us resisting the internal urge to be fake ourselves. I'm not saying, that you can't use some assistance. I'm not somebody that's anti-AI. I'm using the shit like everybody else. Why would you not? You'd be foolish to not use AI in 2025, right? My concern is if you allow the virtual reality to supplant real reality. Because the reality of it is, man, is that, it doesn't matter how much you attempt to fake it or pretend it. The way that you actually feel is going to be based off of like real life shit. Like they say fake it till you make it. What happens if you never make it and you just faking it? Like, there was a couple of weeks ago where I spoke about, we talked about how there are times where you'll have someone who may be going through something and they're so invested in the facade that they almost don't feel comfortable with sharing openly that they're going through something that's pretty profound, right? That's pretty heavy, that's pretty deep. And, sometimes that's a concern of mine because, they always talk about checking in on your friends, and checking in on their mental health. And then they'll say, yeah, sometimes it's your strong friends. Be sure to check in on your strong friends. And so I'm someone that I try to be as tapped in as possible. But one of the things that I often question is what good is checking in if people are so invested in being fake that they're not even going to tell you the truth either way, right? So someone is quietly and secretly fighting with someone, but they're so invested in projecting this fake artificial reality, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, in real time, you're dealing with real life depression. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I mean by when I say it's like there's a war on reality, because regardless of how pronounced you may be in one sector, it doesn't always translate to something that's real. All the online love that you may receive may not feel the real life void that you feel as it relates to, desiring human connection. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, man, it's like when I saw that, I was just like, yo, this is a slippery slope that we're finding ourselves in, even as it relates to something as common as social media, right? Because yeah, we're all clout chasing. But when I saw that post and I was like, oh shit, like Shorty posted the truth and folks is literally coming at her like, how dare you? Like it was almost as if she was hating, you know what I mean? And it's like, nah, I don't think she's hating. I think she's just a little disgusted at the fact that you're plagiarizing. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I was getting at a moment ago. Like, we no longer live in a society where we call out bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And I felt like we used to, or maybe we didn't. Maybe people have always been fake. You know what I mean? But I can think back to a date where, like I said, when you're coming up in music, if it was made clear that you were not who you project. I remember people like Milli Vanilli or Vanilla Ice, people loved them until they realized, oh, wait a minute, what you are projecting is not actually who you are. You know what I mean? And maybe there's a lot of people that fake it, but they're just a lot better at it. But I felt like collectively as a society, once we became aware of the fact that you were in fact faking it, there was a bit of a pushback. There was repudiation here in the spot. But people are just like, yo, I don't care, man. I really don't care if it's real or it's not. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling you, man, we don't care because I don't think that we recognize what it's going to look like in the long run. We don't care because we are not aware of what are the repercussions of living in this artificial world. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, here's what it is, man. But, we are going to go ahead and round this out with stay out of the comments, because you know what? The internet is always fun, but sometimes you got to stay out of the comments because that's where it goes down. I don't know. Like sometimes something crosses my news feed and I'm like, why would the algorithm put this there? And then the moment you go into the comment section, you're like, okay, that's why. So I saw this post the other day, right? It said, I took my kids to the mall today to experience the deliciousness of a hot cinnamon sugar pretzel. Literally, the only reason we went, And as we were leaving to get back in the car, we get honked at repeatedly because someone is waiting on our spot. Mind you, doors are still open. Kids are still being buckled. Parking lot has plenty of other spaces. And this middle-aged woman is throwing her hands and shaking her head like we are doing her a huge disservice. Can we maybe not honk at families trying to safely buckle their children over a parking spot? Seriously? If I had been alone, I would have been petty and pulled open our rooftop tent. So listen, when I saw that, I was getting a little irate because I know how I get. I know the pettiness in me when it comes to a situation like that. But let me tell you something, in the comments did not disappoint. Someone said, I pulled into a disabled, accessible parking spot. A woman coming from the far end of a two-way lane pulls up and starts waving her parking placard around like I didn't have one. I pick mine up and wave it back. So she starts cussing me, blocking traffic both ways. Mind you, there's literally another parking spot facing my car. Finally, the woman in the car behind her rolled her window down and yelled, "Bitch, it's a parking place, not a man. Move and go find a different one." Someone else said, I've gotten out of my car, opened the trunk, and climbed in the back to check my email and scroll literally every other app I have when someone has honked at me. Who hurt me, you ask? Some idiot who thought laying on their horn would get me to leave faster. Joke's on you. I have anger issues and ADHD. I can sit here for hours because I'm petty and I forgot where I was supposed to go next. Listen, I'm telling you. Somebody else said, now I got to pull up Netflix and watch a movie and eat a pretzel because who the fuck are you honking at? Somebody posted a meme said, someone just honked to get me out of my parking spot faster. So now I have to sit here until both of us are dead. This one is funny. Someone said, I can't stand being honked at in the parking lot. Case in point, this post is from my IG stories from March. You honk at me in a parking lot and you'll never see that spot. I stay in that spot until your great grandchildren can't drive anymore if I have to. So he said, this jackass just honked at me in the parking lot because I guess I was taking too long loading up and he wanted the spot. Let me tell y'all something. If you honk at me in a parking lot, you may as well notify the coroner because I'll die in the spot before I move. I live here now. But this one was my favorite. This one sister said, I know it's 4 hours after you posted this, but are you reading these replies from the parking lot, right? Yo, let me tell you something. The way I would have canceled plans, you understand me? It would have been something very profound that I would have just been like, you know what? Nah, I'm good. I completely understand it. Listen, I'm that way when I'm on when I'm driving. Now, I don't do it too much here in Arizona because first off, people have a bad habit of tailgating you. That frustrates the hell out of me, right? So I know how to move around, and because they just drive so incredibly reckless here, I haven't had to do it yet. But there have been times, many times in the past, where I never forget. It was one time I was in Atlanta, and I was on 7585, and it was like right passing downtown, and it is maybe 11 o'clock at night on like a Thursday, right? So the roadways are pretty open this particular evening. And there was this dude that was like damn near bumper to bumper to me, right? So it's like 5 or 6 lanes, going north. And I'm sitting not in the fast lane. I might be like somewhere in the middle lane. And when I tell you this dude is on me, 2-3 lanes to the right, 2 lanes, and the HOV lane to the left. And no one in any of these. And my man is on my ass. So I was so fascinated that I was just like, you know what? Let let me just see how ridiculous this can get. I take my foot off the gas, right? So I'm naturally going maybe 75 miles an hour. I take my foot off the gas and the car just, starts to gradually slow down. When I tell you this clown stayed on my ass, I was going every bit of about 25 miles an hour on the E-way. Dude still sitting there. I'm just sitting here like, dude, like, bro, you got all of these lanes over here, all of these lanes over here, but this is where you decide to camp out at, right? And when I tell you that car would have come to a complete stop, I was prepared to put my hazards on and just be like, you know what? I guess this is just where I'm chilling out at. He finally shoots from around me and shoots ahead. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Right. And I think in that situation, that was just one of those things where like people just get locked into following somebody. And I don't know if he was just hypnotized by my taillights, but dude, get off my ass. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to rush me. I'm not about to go 95 miles an hour because you want to go fast, especially when I'm not in the fast lane and every other lane that's around me is open, right? I was just like, okay, yeah, it's a special breed of absurdity that's down here right now. But these people that were hanging out in their cars, I'm like, yeah, I am very much that person. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm not, like, dead ass. So no, that tickled me. But yeah, you guys, like I said, I didn't want to, have too long of a session this go around. You know what I'm saying? I know I popped in kind of late. I am going to do the session next week where we do the album review. That's going to be hip hop influenced. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, it was a lot of fun. We were a little disappointed that we couldn't do it, but I understood, But in the effort of consistency, I said, I'm still going to go live. Because I know that there are a lot of people that even if you couldn't tap in live, a lot of people also listen to the replay. So, I wanted to definitely just be consistent. But yeah, man, as far as a final word, man, I mean, I feel like I've said a lot, but if I do just have to underscore anything, it really is, man, that, we got to stay locked in. We have to stay locked in. I know that the pendulum swings, right? And right now, politically, we're in a space where I think we are still feeling the full backlash of 8 years of a Black president, right? There were a lot of people that just short-circuited during that period, right? And so much that we've seen since then has been, I think, a direct result of just people short-circuiting. I really do believe that that's what led to the rise of a character like Trump. Back in the day, someone like him would have never really been taken seriously. But I think that many people seeing Black excellence in a position of high leadership like that was just not something that they were prepared for, right? And so it sent a lot of people off. And so, we've still been reeling from that, but balance to me operates like a pendulum. And I do think that there will be a point that it swings back, in this interim period, right? Where it feels like we are losing a grasp on, what's real. I think it becomes very important that you just remain honest with yourself, right? It's very tempting to give in. I see it all the time on social media. It's very tempting to give in, when you're like, oh man, the social media platforms are monetizing now. And so like everybody is tapping into the grift. Like everybody is becoming clickbait. Everybody is becoming the National Enquirer, because at this point, you really don't care about the damage that you inflict. You're just trying to get yours. And, it's my belief, and this might just be a spiritual thing. I think that stuff comes with karmic debt. I think that there is a debt to pay when you are investing in the chaos. I think that there's a karmic debt to pay when you are knowingly misleading people, right? Because those are the seeds that you're sowing. And I don't care about all this AI stuff, or technology. I do not think that you can sidestep the universal laws of nature, which is that of seed time and harvest. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, right? I do believe that what you invest in, the seeds that you sow, will create a harvest, and you will have to reap that harvest, and it may not come in the way that you are perceiving it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you are sowing seeds of deception, if you are sowing seeds of grift, if you are intentionally misleading people, right? Then in other areas of your life where you desire revelation, in other areas of your life where you are looking for a breakthrough, in other areas of your life where you are searching some wisdom, please do not believe that you can be investing in lies, that you can be investing in deception, that you can be 10 toes down in the grift, but then still expect wisdom, knowledge, spiritual and mental breakthroughs on the other side. It's like, no, that is just not how the universe works. That's not how karma works, right? And I think we're in a day and age where it's like, I think that when I talk about the war in reality, that's why I kind of come back to that, because it's like, inside of this artificial world, there are things that look like success, right? And matter of fact, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So I got a buddy of mine, and he's got a YouTube channel that is attached to his business, but he's kind of like learning his way around like YouTube and this business that he's been building. So I remember he was telling me a story about how he had, created this video that deals with this course that he's created, and not just the typical courses where people are like, oh yeah, I sell courses now. Like, nah, he really put a lot of effort into this course that came from all of his years of expertise inside of the sales space. So he told me, I, put this video together, whatever he put out on YouTube. And he said, yeah, man. And they had like 128, views. And so he's telling me this story. And when he first stopped at the 128 views, admittedly, I had to kind of like hold in the chuckle a little bit, because, a piece of me was thinking, oh, isn't that cute? You know what I'm saying? He, little 128, and not that like I'm popping on YouTube, because by no means am I, right? But I just laughed because I was like 128, but he immediately followed it up with, yeah, and that led to 8 sales. And right there, I was like, yep, you figured it out. You figured it out, right? You figured it out already. Because it doesn't really matter whether or not you go viral. It doesn't really matter if you have the millions of people, that saw this video, and if it had a ton of engagement. Sometimes it's not a matter of how many, it's a matter of who, right? Like, who was tapped in. It's a quality over quantity. And I feel like as social media was building, they kind of manipulated us a little bit. And they all got us into this space where we started valuing the quantity. The moment that they started to place a scale on the amount of engagement that you receive, essentially they commodified like engagement. And then we then said that the value of something that I share ultimately comes down to how many people are tapped into it. And that's not always the case, right? And so, that is one of the major tenets of social media. And if you're not careful, you will make that your reality, that the thing that I'm doing does not have value if it does not hit these artificial benchmarks, right? If a lot of people aren't keyed into it, I now have to question the value of the thing that I do. And so one of the reasons why I'm always pushing back against this, and I'm going to keep saying this, is because many of us have already been manipulated and contaminated by this new world that we're living in, this new metaverse that we're living in, that only sees value in the quantity. But AI is here now, and AI is more efficient in this digital space than we are, right? So, similar to the video that I showed earlier today with Popeyes, if that's a successful campaign, you can say goodbye to Popeyes filming actual commercials. Why would they? Why would they, when I could just go to a coder, have them do something, get a better response than if I actually use real people, right? You're going to start to see more people tap into that. And as a result, us as the real humans are going to be, we're going to lose motivation in expressing ourselves. Or if we do express ourselves, we're going to almost feel the need to catch these cues directly from AI. I see it already. The majority of the content that you see online right now, like talking head, I already know that that's people reading scripts that they've gotten from AI, right? Where on one level, it's almost like, yeah, we're fine tuning things. But on another level, it's like this thing, we are now outsourcing our critical thought, right? And we are allowing these devices to do the thinking for us. And a lot of people are starting to kind of do certain tests and stuff and realizing that, AI isn't as, as open as we like to believe it is. It is telling you what you want to hear, right? It's you have to know how to even prompt it so that it can challenge you. So if we continue to outsource our thinking to these machines, all we're going to do is just strengthen the walls of that echo chamber that it already feels like many of us are living in, because all it's going to do is just more or less reverberate what it is that it thinks you want to hear, right? Because that's all of these things are doing. They're all devices to keep you engaged. You know what I'm saying? And so it's almost like, yeah, once again, man, if we are not very mindful that this is what the war is, and I'm not saying don't use it for your professional stuff, and the whole nine. I'm saying be cautious about how it can manipulate how you feel or what you think about yourself. Because us competing against AI inside of a digital space, that's a losing battle. That's a losing battle, right? So you got to desire the real, man. You got to desire the real. If really what you want is to lead a fulfilling life, But like I said, these are my thoughts. These are going to be things that I continue to share, just because I'm someone that kind of reads between the lines, right? And, again, if it was just a bunch of people using AI and a bunch of random debates online, and I felt like people were still whole and, feeling good, feeling fulfilled, then I probably wouldn't be so tapped in. You know what I mean? But I think I'm tapped in because I'm like, yeah, like the deeper we go into this virtual world, it's removing very important and significant pieces of what makes us human, right? So even beyond being a creative, even beyond being an artist, like this is something, man, that we are going to have to be very mindful of, But as always, you guys, it was a pleasure. I want to thank you for tapping in to this like impromptu session. You know what I'm saying? This impromptu late night session. Every week is going to be something different, and so it's always a pleasure to show up. And until the next time.